Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Control Room Podcast. Got a special one for you today. If you listen to Astrology 101 Part 1 and Part 2, actually you're not going to recognize them because this was way before we were doing video. This is your first time on screen. What's up, Ryan? How's it going, man?
Very good, man. Very first time, man. Excited to do this with video and audio.
They get to see what the astrology guru actually looks like. Look, he's got the glasses and everything. He's professional. I told y'all.
Here we go.
Yeah, man. So we talk about this stuff all the time, and we're coming up with an idea for the show. And we touched on it a little bit in Astrology 101 Part 2 when we discussed like which signs were most compatible and why. Everybody kind of dating is hard and relationships are hard in general, whether it's friendships, whether it's dealing with your family, whether it's coworkers. And astrology sometimes plays a role in how well you get along with somebody. So I mean, what do you think about astrology and compatibility and all that kind of stuff?
I think I was kind of rehashing this book or a couple of books, and I think the phrase that perfectly kind of encapsulates what we're talking about is just a discovery itself. You know, so I think it definitely sets you on the path to discovering yourself better, and then knowing how to navigate based on your kind of general characteristics of your zodiac signs. Um, I think a misnomer is people kind of just think the sun sign is just it. That is who you are. But no, that's basically your skeleton. That's the general characteristic of who you are. But then you have moon signs and you have signs in different planets and so forth and so on. And then that mixture is what makes you unique. It's kind of like your fingerprint. So I think, people understanding that won't get caught up so much on the sun side, but it is your general characteristic, and it is a platform for you to use to explore yourself further as far as you want to. And I like to tell people it's not the end all be all. Of course, there's other ways of discovering self. It doesn't have to be exclusively astrology, but it definitely will help in regards to relationships and how you interact with others, whether it be a romantic relationship or friendship or social group. Some people, their signs are just inherently antisocial, more loners, and then other signs are more outgoing. And so, if you know that about yourself,
Let me ask you, which signs are more antisocial and which signs are more outgoing?
um, Cancers are definitely homebodies. Tauruses are homebodies. Pisces are tend to be loners at times, and Aquarius is definitely dance to the beat of their own drum. They kind of go at their whim. And then the more kind of uh, outgoing, Aries definitely is more outgoing. Gemini, Leos are outgoing. Sagittarius are outgoing, and so Scorpios are more homebodies, and there's the in between. Some that can do both, right? Like Geminis are, I mean, they're everywhere. So there's times when they want to be by themselves and just do the loner thing, and then there's times when they want to get out. Virgos, I would say, would also kind of both. There's times when they're outgoing, and then times that they need to just slow things down and just do their own thing. So there's a mixture, but the more outgoing definitely is Aries. Capricorn is another one I didn't mention. Is very outgoing, very social.
Shout out DQ Capricorn.
Out there, she and see now she to the T,
Yeah.
the socialite. She likes to get out there and mingle and show everybody a good time. Leos are known for that. So
Mhm.
um, yeah, it's just one of those things where if you know about yourself after self discovery and kind of comparison, like I'm a loner, so if you have a romantic you're romantically involved with somebody who's more outgoing, that could be a clash because they might want you to go out all the time and socialize and like, hey man, that is not me. Like if you want to do that, go ahead, but don't include me in that social mix. And then depending on the other characteristics that shape you, that may be, the breaking point.
All right, so let's get into it, man. Compatibility wise, I don't know if you got a list. You can do it off your head. I don't know how you're rolling today, but which signs tend to be more compatible?
Um, so this is a like a split question. Sorry to be elusive, but
Yeah, no,
so
break it down.
by the
Break it down.
I tend to go. The whole reason why I got into astrology as deeply as I did was because of my own kind of comparisons without like a book as a guide, and then I kind of found a few books that really matched my observations to the most for the most part. But I don't agree entirely with the book. So like I can go down a few where the book says, like, for instance, Aries and Gemini are great compatibility wise. I've never seen that. It doesn't mean that that's not true, but and their way of explaining it was really interesting, and it made me want to delve a little bit more into it because it's been a while. So that was kind of like, okay, wow, I don't remember reading that at all. Definitely have not observed that at all. But the book kind of described um, that Aries, as we know, they insist on dominating, right? But Gemini is clever enough and elusive enough to keep Aries on their toes and not allow them to completely dominate them in the areas they don't want to be dominated. And so there's a kind of, I guess you could say, tug of war between the two, but they both are intrigued by that, and so it makes them, highly compatible. Uh, but what I noticed, which the book doesn't really rate highly, it kind of rates it as maybe a possibility, is Aries and Cancer.
Mhm.
Those two, lock up a lot. I've seen that happen a lot, and it doesn't matter if it's a relationship. It doesn't matter who's the male, who's the female, and it doesn't matter if it could be just a friendship. But those two tend to join up and have a respect and a bond that's very unique. Pisces and Capricorn. I mean, excuse me, not Pisces and Capricorn, Virgo and Capricorn, which we talked about before. That seems to be like a hit every single time. Leos and Libras is another hit. And then like there's more specifics like Aquarius males and Pisces women. That's a hookup that happens a lot, but not necessarily the same going the other way with Pisces males and Aquarius women. Ironically, the book says Pisces and Aries is a lock. That's a good match, also. And I was like, say word like that. I, I'm a Pisces.
You know what? I'm gonna cut you off because we have an Aries that we work with,
Hmm.
who I think is fond of both of us. You know, Keith, and he's kind of mentored us and been very supportive of us, and he is definitely a take charge Aries, like to the T. And I think I mentioned to you, like we mentioned on previous podcasts, is that I've had my clashes with Aries,
Hmm.
just because of the way, just because of their approach is so
Hmm.
abrasive. Uh,
Hmm.
but at the same time, I tend to have a lot of Aries in my life that in their own way are supportive, whether it's my brother, whether it's Natalie, whether it's Keith at work, even on the basketball team with Becky and Imani. You know,
Hmm.
I tend to, I don't know whether it's like they enjoy poking at me, and it may be the same with you, but there's something about our demeanor that seems to draw them in. And so, yeah, it's a weird kind of connection I have with Aries, and it might be the same for you.
Yeah, well, I will. In saying that, and it's the reason. One of the reasons why I don't like pigeonholing too much is because, like you and I, as well as Gemini's and Sagittarius, are mutable signs, which means we're very adaptable. Um, and so we can pretty much. We are probably the most likely to get along with anybody. We can adapt, and I think that's a quality that a lot of other signs appreciate about us, that like about us. Um, but yeah, Aries tend to love to be dominant. They have to be dominant, and there's an innocence to them as well. I mean, I they are the baby of the zodiac. They're the first sign of the zodiac, so I kind of equate them to babies, or in a sense where it's just all about the exploration. They kind of want to know what their powers are. So they don't know enough to be afraid in certain instances. But when they kind of mature a little bit and they realize it's like, oh, I stepped on that person's toe. I didn't really want to do that. I didn't really want to, set that path ablaze. But, that's a part of the learning process. And I think they're just, a part of them is just more curious about exploring and seeing where different paths take them and not being afraid, you know. Whereas in comparison to like a Leo, Leos are fire sign. They share basic qualities with Aries, but not all of them. So Leos are a fixed sign. So like once they kind of lock on to something that's working, that's it. That's their thing. So whereas Aries are all about the exploration. They'll lock onto something for a period and then they get bored and then they want to jump into something else and just, like a baby, just, hey, what's this all about? So they're not really as committed as Leos. That could be that's a difference between those two signs, but they have a lot in common as well. So I think with Aries, it's just about the exploration. Karen is somebody who both of us get along with well. We both think Karen is dope, and she's been supportive since day one. So again, it goes back to
Aries?
yeah, Karen's Aries.
Wow,
Yeah,
that was unexpected.
right. But you know what though, and no knock on her, but she is unabashed. She is not shy about saying that she runs her relationship, and I believe her 100%. She gonna make sure she's the leader. But no, they're sweet, they're loving, supportive. I mean, they're not a bad sign at all, and I do appreciate everyone, Aries included. So
We were talking the other day. You were saying like Virgos are a water sign, and most water signs get along.
Virgos are earth sign.
Earth sign. And is that
Yeah.
what you mean? Most
Hmm.
earth signs get along.
Hmm.
And where are the other earth signs?
So Taurus and Capricorn.
So Virgo, Taurus, Capricorn.
Hmm.
And what about the fire signs? Do they get along? That's like Leo, Aries, and what?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
So I mean, um, it's kind of cool to think of the element in that way. The Earth, and I read this not long ago. The Earth signs tend to be more compatible than the other signs because you think about the Earth is steady, it's consistent, and they all Earth signs kind of appreciate that, just being grounded, and they can relate to each other in that sense. They're not as different from each other. Capricorns and Virgos and Tauruses are not as different from each other as some of the signs of other elements like fires. You just think about fire, that's temperamental, burning, so it's like, and Leos, for instance, like I was saying earlier, Leos, they're not necessarily known as a leader sign, but they definitely are the leader of their own lives. And so they don't care so much. The cardinal signs, and I don't want to get too far off path because it can get
Yeah,
a little
you hit
muddled.
me with elements. Now you're saying cardinal.
Right. So
Six,
let's keep it simple. But Leos are not a sign that necessarily cares about directing what other people do, but they do like to be the leaders. So, if you think of Leo, the lion, king of the jungle, they see themselves as royalty. They want to be praised and worshiped, to a certain extent. And if you do that, then there's gifts that they don't mind sharing, but they have to be worshipped in a way. I don't want to say worship, but they have to be and appreciated on a high level,
Okay.
right? And
So relationships with Leos, you guys show them a lot of appreciation.
you definitely their inequalities. You gotta let them know they're special. They're great, and a lot of them are. Uh, let me digress because Magic Johnson's a Leo.
But no, go ahead, talk about your boy because he needs all the praise in the world. Magic Man.
I won't do that, but we say that for that.
4, 5, 6 different women. That's what they like.
Wow, wow, we went there. See, I'm trying to pull back. You you hit the gas. Uh, but yeah, the Magic Man. If you look at just even the way he plays, or even him as an owner, he's gonna let you know I'm a part of this winning. You give me some love, show me some praise, and he kind of exudes that, and he's also, if you buy into that, like the way he played with the Lakers, oh, I'm gonna share the ball. We gonna have fun. As long as you give into the concept that I'm the one running the show and I get the most praise, it's all good. Let's have fun. Um, so that's kind of Leo in the capsule. But the reason why them and then let's say Aries won't may not necessarily get along, typically don't, is because they both approach it with that fiery passion. Um, they are them and Sagittarius are known for being blunt. They don't care about hurting people's feelings. They say how they feel. And Aries wants to dominate, and Leo in their own way wants to dominate. So that could be, that could be a bomb. Typically, it would be, in a relationship sense. Um, and so when it gets into other elements, it gets a little bit, it changes. The dynamics change a little bit. Like Sagittarius is a fire sign, but they're also mutable. They're adaptable. So even though they have that fiery passion, they also have the ability to get along with just about anybody. So they can get along with Leos or have a relationship with a Leo or the Aries, but not Aries and Leo. Does that if that makes sense?
Yeah.
Whereas the earth signs, there's more of a connection between the two and how they kind of view life.
How many elements are there?
There is four total. So you got air and you got water also.
Okay.
And the air signs are Aquarius, Gemini, and Libra. They all, to a degree, like dancing to the beat of their own drum. If you think about the air and the way the wind blows, that sometimes the way their thought pattern goes. Hey, man, later I gotta follow this my whim, and
And we work with a few Libras that exude that.
for sure, for sure, if something tickles their fancy, hey, they're gone, and so they're kind of operate on that. And then the water signs are Pisces, Scorpio, and Cancer, and all of them are introverted in a sense, and all of them are highly emotional.
Mm.
And I think we talked about that on a previous episode, or maybe it was one of our conversations. But you you pointed out to me that I can be emotional.
Yeah, the
Uh,
previous episode. Yeah, you can let your emotions run wild a little bit.
for sure. So, I like to think of the imagery like water. Water can be calm, but it also can be, wavy, and it could be tumultuous. So, um,
Well,
it just
from a special request from our good friend Emily, we didn't spend enough time on cancers
okay.
last time. So if you can just dedicate some time to cancers, Emily, here you go.
I think we touched on a little bit
Who,
earlier.
who
Cancers
cancers
or homebodies.
who are they
Huh?
most compatible with?
Cancers do get along with Aries. Cancers also get along well with Virgos.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Natalie. Okay.
the according to the book, the ones that cancers get along the most with is Pisces. And we're both water signs. Um, in my own personal life, I haven't seen that a lot. Um, but I do see that as possible just because they're water signs, and cancers like being homebodies, homemakers, um, and Pisces kind of are drawn to that, something to kind of to ground them a little bit and stabilize them. But yeah, cancers can be emotional. If their home life is good, they're very loving and sharing, but they're kind of um, they're not too social. They like just being homemakers. Really, they're great homemakers. They make great mothers. Great grandmothers. As long as the home is stable, they'll definitely enhance it and more, make it special. But that's kind of where they dwell. Um, Cancers are highly emotional, and they're very sensitive. If you think about the crab, in the cancer, the crab is encased in the shell, and when things get tough, they kind of bottle up and use their shell as their protector. And that's kind of how cancer. They're extremely sensitive, and so if you hit a sore spot, you got a war going. They don't like that too well if they feel like they're being slighted. But Cancers, if on the male side, make great athletes. Mike Tyson's a Cancer. Barry Sanders is a Cancer. Carl Lewis is a Cancer. Um, there's several. Um, and that's when I kind of look at that, where they channel their emotion, their emotional side, and really use that to their favor. And Mike Tyson actually talks about it more in depth than any other athlete that I've heard of. That's a Cancer, where he's really kind of like, he channeled his fear and his past, and he was able to channel just kind of his own emotional, uh, I guess, depression from his upbringing into this rage that he channeled, on his opponents, and became this significant champion. But you could just look at him and just tell that's a whole lot of emotion on top of skill, right? And that's what made his approach very different, because it was personal. Even though the people themselves, the opponents, didn't do nothing to him, he looked at it that way because he was just that emotional. So, you know, um, cancers wear their emotions on their sleeves. I have a lot of family members who cancer, so that's one of the signs that I feel like I know the best. Um, and I also tell people, like, because I have a lot of cancers in my family, I think that's one of the reasons why I haven't gone down that route, which the book suggests, as kind of complementing my romantic life with a cancer, so to speak, because I got so much of that. I think just naturally, me being me, I'm looking for something else.
And we
But
we discussed that on the last pod. It's the environment you grow up in. Because my older brother was an Aries, I'm
hmm
used to that energy. I'm used to that confrontation. It's natural for me. So when
hmm
I do that in a coworker or a friend or a player, when I feel that, it doesn't make me run away. It's like, oh, I'm used to this. And then there's like kind of a natural back and forth there. And like I say, so you saying growing up around like cancers, you're kind of what that looks like. So you're just like, all right, like I know what this is and I'm good.
right, exactly, exactly. And you might have been blessed that you do have a Aries that you acclimated to early. Because I'm telling you, man, when I first started clashing with them, that caught me so far off guard. I did not understand it at all.
Yeah, they try and rattle your cage, and once they realize they can't, then it's just like, oh, okay. But yeah, like my brother, he's good for trying to test you. A lot of other Aries we know they definitely gonna test you, challenge you. Say a lot of things. We're just like, man, can you just calm down? Like, can we just have a civil conversation? Do we gotta be at war the whole time? Come on,
hmm
every time. Come on, man.
Yeah, actually, the book actually says Aries and Virgos in a relationship don't get along for that exact same reason, because Virgos are independent thinkers.
Yeah.
So you're not gonna let somebody just lead you just because if it doesn't make sense, you're not gonna do it. So it don't matter who it is.
Why don't you run down the list if you can of signs you probably not shouldn't be with, but class like that, like Aries and Virgo, relationship wise, it's going to be a tough one.
Clash, um,
Well, just in comparison to where you just said like Aries and Virgos, there's going to be a natural budding of that
right.
there.
I think the natural clash, and I'm glad I wrote this down. The natural clash is the opposite, your opposite sign. Um, and then there could be, depending on how you were brought up, like we were talking about, that could change a little bit. But like Aries and Libras are opposite signs, and they're written down as such. They're polar opposites, and they're on the opposite. They're 6 months apart, and so Aries is a sign about self exploration. Libra is more about partnership and kind of grouping people together and just kind of having a fellowship. So they clash, and then Taurus are more about personal possessions, and the Scorpios are more about shared possessions, and they're more about leaving a legacy. So those two can clash, and they're opposites. And then Gemini and Sagittarius. Gemini is all about self expression, whereas Sagittarius is more about kind of the expression of everyone bringing everyone together. What are we trying to say? They're also big into philosophy and stuff like that. And then Cancer and Capricorn are opposites. Cancer is, like I said earlier, they're more about home life. Capricorn is more about public life. Those two signs both insist on being leaders. And in the same way, and we can talk about that in another episode or later in this one, but Cancers do it in a passive way, and so do Capricorn. So they're not going to be like Aries, who is going to go outright and say, "No, you do what I tell you to do when I tell you to do it." Cancer and Capricorn kind of, they're just passive until you realize they're not going to do what you want them to do. They want you to follow them, and they just go about it in a passive way. But they're very effective. So those two can clash. Um, Leo and Aquarius. Leo is a sign of personal pleasure. Like we talked about, they like being praised. Aquarius kind of dances to the beat of their own drum. They can be loners. They like, just floating with their ideas. And like I was saying about air signs, they just like going on a whim and following whatever tickles their fancy. And so them and Leo tend to clash. I like that one in my personal observation. That's interesting because Michael Jordan's Aquarius, Magic Johnson's a Leo, and
Ah,
you can tell like they're totally different approaches to the game, you know, and also that competitiveness. Like Michael said, Magic is the guy that I'm gonna take down off of that ledge. I'm gonna put myself where he is. You know, um, and then Virgos and Pisces, which is ironic because that's us, but we're also opposite signs. So typically, Virgos and Pisces don't, they can clash, right? But I think, again, like I was talking about elements, when you're looking at the individual signs, you have to account for certain characteristics that, even though we're opposites, we're both mutable. So that makes us it makes it easy for us to adapt to each other or other people. And I think that's not the case with, like, say, Leo and Aquarius.
but to add, your dad's a Virgo as well.
My dad's a Virgo, right? So that plays into it as well. Um, absolutely. And so that's sometimes I'm a little hard to pin down in that sense because in trying to consider all those things. But yeah, those typically, by the rule book, the opposite signs, the signs that are 6 months apart from each other, are the ones that tend to clash the most. And when they clash, man, it's a clash because they're just approaching things from the opposite end. And this might be a little bit too far back for people to kind of relate to, but Sugar Ray Leonard and Tommy Hearns, when they fought each other, Sugar Ray Leonard's a Taurus, Tommy Hearns a Scorpio, and I mean the way that they fought is a passion that is unparalleled. And I always attribute that to astrology. Astrology is just like they're opposites, so they're just really keying in on exactly what they don't like about that other person, because it's not them. Their approach is totally different from their approach, so it makes them uncomfortable and makes them angry, and they want to knock each other's head off, and it ends up being very competitive because of balance, just the balance of life. It's like, no one sign was meant to dominate the other. So even though you don't get where this other person's coming from, they have a valid point too, and you're going to accept that one way or another, right? So, but of the signs that are opposite, I think Virgos and Pisces have the capability of getting along better with each other in those comparisons. But like you said, my dad's a Virgo, and that definitely helped me to acclimate to Virgos more, also.
No, man, that's dope. And I would say that, if you can make that opposite pairing work, you can learn a lot from each other because you are so different. Yeah, so obviously, I could, from personal experience, I think it's fair to say we've learned a lot from each other. We view things similar, but our approaches can be totally different, and that's kind of cool to see. But yeah, man, that's definitely fascinating, and it's curious to see, like, once you get this research in, you kind of want to look up everybody's birthday and see who's what. Like, I have a lot of friends that are in February, whether it's you, whether it's my foster brother Jamel, whether it's Caleb, whether it's my buddy Steve. They're always like late February, mid February. So I think I got like a lot of Pisces, and I guess Aquarius would be early February, right?
Hmm. Yep.
So I grew up with a lot of Aquariuses or Pisces, so that may be another reason why. And my cousin Brandon is a Pisces. He's another one that is a dreamer. I was
Hmm.
actually thinking about this last night. I feel like you guys have a lot more in common than I realized. Because I remember
Hmm.
you said you used to talk a lot of shit when you was younger, and Brent kind of in that mode right now where he's like
Right.
challenging all the older people in the family, calling them
Right.
out, DMing people. You've gotten a couple of his DMs.
I did.
So I was thinking about that. I was like, you know what? Brandon is pretty unique, thinks his own kind of way, creative in his own aspect. I was like,
Hmm.
man, you was telling me some of your younger stories. So I was like, I'm starting to make that connection. So that, I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely see a similarity between myself and Brandon. I wasn't sure what his sign was, but that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm almost certain he's a Pisces.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wild, man, when I was younger.
Oh,
I
I've heard the stories.
I never I never was the one who started it, but boy, if you got me going, then you couldn't shut me up.
Mhm.
And that's hilarious when I look back on it, but some of it I would not be doing today.
Mhm.
I want to run down a couple of quick just stats on
Yeah,
signs because I know,
hit me when you're
we jump around and just gives everyone a little bit of some stuff to chew on because I will say in reviewing what I reviewed, man, it sparked my interest and it made me think, man, I haven't gone over this stuff in a while. I forgot certain things or I don't remember this. I'm like, wow, this is interesting to look at again after years and years of observation and not kind of looking at any kind of text as a guide. It's kind of fun to review these things and remember some of these things um, that I forgot. But so fire signs, we went over that: Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, and what that means is active and enthusiastic. Um, Earth signs: Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn. What that means is practical and stable. Air signs: Gemini, Libra, Aquarius, and what that means is intellectual and very big on communication. Water signs: Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces, and very emotional, like I was saying about Cancer, and very intuitive. So they use kind of their intuition as a guide, more so than study or science or facts. They just kind of go on how they feel, and sometimes this stuff is accurate. I definitely do. Although I like reading up on my stuff as well. And then also, we can touch upon this on another episode, but just because I threw it out there, I don't want to leave people hanging. So, cardinal signs are Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. And they are enterprisers, they're outgoing, and they're initiators. Um, where I like to put on top of that is they insist on being leaders. And they go about it different ways, but they have to be the leader of their group. Fixed signs are Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. They are resistant to change, which means fixed. Once they get locked in on whatever their habits are, it's hard for them to change. Um, they're perfecters and they're finishers. So they're not known for being like originators, but they're known for taking inventions and then enhancing them and like finishing the product. Being the last one to carry the baton, finish the race. They like locking in on what's there and then making that better. So they're known for that. It doesn't mean that they can't be creative, but that's kind of what their basic characteristic is known for. And then finally, mutable signs, which I touched upon, is Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces, both of us. And that means we're flexible, we're versatile, and we're adaptable. Um, and so basically, that's the general characteristics of those signs.
Hmm. And then like after looking back on it after all these years, does it, I mean, obviously it's not going to line up 100%, but for the most part, do you see trends in all those like categories?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. For instance, my mom is a Taurus and she's very fixed. She's very set in her ways. And when one thing when reading a textbook, sometimes it can come across as negative. You don't kind of know how to look into it, or you read it a certain way. But I don't look at it as a negative. It's just kind of knowing kind of the trend. But yeah, my mom is a finisher. She'll take whatever, and she'll try to enhance it. And she fits that to the T. So I'm like, Wow, that's I definitely love my mom, and I love everything she brings to the table, you know. So now Taurus and Pisces, I don't want to carry this on, are known for, you know, being a good couple as well. And that could be one of those situations where Pisces are originators, they're creative, but Taurus can take that and put finishing touches on it. Or you can even look at like Michael Jordan, who's an Aquarius, same thing. You know, Bird and Magic and the other players before kind of brought basketball to a certain level, and he said, okay, let me put the cherry on top. Let me, you know, bring this all together and show you what all this, where all this is going to, right? Let me put a, you know, and he did. I mean, the perfect timing, perfect moment, perfect attitude for him to just say, okay, well, that's not the end. What Bird, Magic, and Kareem and all these other guys did were great, but there's more, and let me show you what that more is, and in combination to what they've done, and then now we put a cherry on. Like almost the vibe that Michael left with basketball is we've seen all there is to see,
Mm.
right? That's kind of a finishing touch, and I think that was his goal, right? So as an Aquarius and as a fixed sign, he didn't invent basketball, he didn't invent the moves, he didn't invent the high flying, but he encapsulated all those things into one player, right? That kind of gave people this idea of, okay, we've seen it all now, right? And maybe we have, you know.
Yeah, I mean, to this day, they're still looking for the next Michael Jordan, and obviously Kobe Bryant, Virgo, who was like, "I'm gonna study everything he does, and I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
try and perfect it, and I'm gonna try and be better." And that's why he was like the closest to Michael. But like
Mm-hmm.
I say, he watched tapes on Michael, Magic, Jerry West, Oscar Robertson. He studied everybody,
Mm-hmm.
knew the triangle in and out. I think he even read like the refs' handbooks to know where they would be placed on the court. Like he's looking at it from all angles, so he can
Right.
get every edge he can, and in a competitive aspect, I can relate.
Yeah, absolutely. I do see some parallels between you and Kobe for sure. Um, uh, but actually, what Kevin Durant said actually lends itself to what we were talking about with Michael too, where basically Kevin said Michael is the book,
Right.
right? He put the cherry on top. You know, he's the one that's at that ultra high level that I'm still studying him to this day because he just perfected, you know, every aspect of his game.
Mm.
And again, like I said, that's the finishing touch, you know. And so, yeah, I mean, I'd love to jump into it more. Like I said, I'm more intrigued with it now, having reread some of these passages in this book and writing down some notes. I'm like, man, you know, wow, I really need to refresh myself on this stuff and lock in on certain things that I may have missed when I was in my 20s, you know.
Before we wrap up, I'm just curious. Like after you went over everything, what do you find most fascinating about this subject?
Well, I think that's a good question. I think what's fascinating is that I'm looking at it with a new pair of eyes. You know, like one of the things, like I said, Aries and Gemini, like going over the compatibility. When I was reading through it the first time, you know, in my 20s, I was looking for who am I most compatible with, right? Who is the one for me, right? You know, what's the area of direction I should go in, right? And where are the signs that I should steer clear of, right? So even when I read through the book and I was reading on signs that weren't, you know, my own, like Libra's compatibility or whoever, you know, it still was with my own vantage point. Is like, you know, let me see why this would work with this person or not work with this person, and stuff like that. Now I look with it with a fresh pair of eyes, where it's just like I don't care, you know, except I just want to learn, you know, like there's no personal agenda involved with the reading, and I think it opens my mind more to seeing things for what they are instead of what I want to make them into being, and that's what I find the most fascinating. But also, just, you know, I think in doing that, I realized that unintentionally I skipped over some, you know, valid points or things that are worth looking into a little bit further. Because, like I said, even it may not apply to me. Like I said, Aries and Gemini, that was one of the first compatibility segments I read, and I was like, wait a minute, I don't know any couples like that. And
Yeah,
But
we got to check with all our Aries and see if there's a Gemini in there.
it's possible. But when I was reading, I said, you know what, I can see theoretically, I can see how that could work really well.
Mhm.
And so again, it's like, okay, well, let me keep my mind open and let me see. Like you said, maybe we will find there is, a couple that, meets those categories and gets along well. And it's like, okay, that does work. So I'm approaching it more with an open mind, I think is the difference. And that's what makes it more intriguing because it's just more pure learning now as opposed to a personal agenda.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like it's just a study of people and behaviors and just what makes someone tick. And like you said, whether it's a Leo, like you taught me, like they need to be praised. You know,
Hmm.
they like things a certain way. With Virgos, like I said, sometimes we like to go out, sometimes we like to stay in. You know, it just kind of depends on what mood we're in. But we can do both. Like I said, you're the same way. So it's good to know whether, like I say, it's your friends, whether it's your relationship, whether it's your family, kind of understanding. Like I got asked you last podcast about my dad, who's one of the most confounding people I've ever met in my life. Was like, what sign is he? Because there needs to be a case study on him, because he is one unique individual who's had a wild experience. So, and obviously, a relationship with me and my brothers, so it's just it sometimes it gives you that aha moment where you're just like, that could explain why we've had the relationship we've had over the years. So I think that's what's so fun about it.
Yeah, for sure. Um, and it can definitely one of the first things that the book pointed out, which is dead on with my observation, and I've expressed before too, is that the book points out, like, the sun sign is a skeleton, and the more you go in depth, in your personal journey, the more you learn. And people get caught up on the sun sign, like, in astrology, zodiacs, and books or wherever you might read that, it'll say, well, this applies to all cancers, or this applies to all Virgos. Virgos are gonna, you guys gonna, make a lot of money this month or whatever. And it's like, there's no way that's possible,
Hmm.
right? Every Virgo on the planet is not going to be rich this month. That it
Right.
just makes sense. And so it's a starting point. Basically, it's your general character, but then the details, if the more you delve into it, the more you kind of learn your personal details. But I think the cool thing about sun signs is that, especially for me, it's like you kind of realize, even though I'm unique, uh and the individual, I'm a Pisces, and some of the things that I think are unique to me aren't. There's a lot of other, like you said about Brandon, there's a lot of other Pisces that love basketball, that are into music for the same reason as I am, and just, it goes on and on. So once you kind of get out of yourself a little bit and you realize that you share a lot of commonalities with people who were born in the same time you were, the same month you were, essentially, it kind of opens up your horizons, and you don't get into that isolated mode. Like, this is just me. It's
Well,
it's
it's very comforting. Like when you go to the astrology pages and you go to your Virgo page and you see a meme that describes exactly how you're feeling, you're like,
Yeah.
other people feel like this too. And that's kind of heartwarming to know you're not alone. So I think that's why those pages in astrology in general is really popular right now, because it lets people know they're not the only people who feel a certain way,
Hmm.
or approach a life from a certain way. And I think that's really cool. You feel a part of a team.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're not alone. There's people who, and it's funny, like I've seen, Lucy post Virgo memes, I've seen you post Virgo memes, uh and a few others that I know, and it's like, that's dead on. That's dead on Virgo, So I'll giggle, or like you said, you identify with Kobe. There's certain things that Kobe, people, of course, are love Kobe and are always posting things about him and remembrance of him, quotes he said, or whatever it is, and that's so you, man. That's so you. Every time, and I was like, that's that Virgo stuff.
Yeah.
That's that straight on Virgo stuff. So yeah, it's like you identify with that, and like, yeah, this is a thing, right? So you are who you are, and we can get into the history. You asked me, I think, in the previous episode, the general history of it. Like I said, this can go in so many different directions. I kind of want to reel it in a little bit.
Yeah, we can hit that later because Zoom probably gonna kick us off soon.
Yeah, for sure. But the history is deep too, and how we got to this point. It adds some validity to it. Our ancestors weren't stupid.
Yeah.
They observed some pretty profound things and documented it. So
Well, all right, man. This is another good educational pod. That's why I like to call it Astrology 101, because like a class, you learn this stuff, but it's always fun. And
absolutely,
I appreciate having you on. You're a busy man. It was hard to lock down for episode number 3.
it's all good, man. We got to get back on it. I'm pumped up now, man. So yeah, man, we gotta do some more episodes, more without such a big gap in time.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions for the astrology guru, DM me. I will ask him. Like I said, Emily was like, we need to talk about cancers more. So hopefully that was good for you, Emily. But we'll see.
Hope so.
All right, man. Talk to you later.
All right, man. Peace.
Everybody, thank you for joining us. Like, share, subscribe, do all that good stuff, and peace out.